to A Roots Me'ir. I'm your host, Yehaskell Lang, and we're back again with best-selling author and educator, Rabbi David Aaron of Israelite. Welcome, Rabbi Aaron.
How you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Great.
Good to have you here. Now, I've been pretty nice to you until now, Rabbi, but I'm going to start asking some pretty tough questions.
Oh, no, please don't.
Sorry, too late.
Okay.
We've been talking a little bit about God and the meaning of God in our lives, but the fact is, atheism is pretty popular today. There was recently a conference in Tel Aviv on atheism. Hundreds of people showed up. Why do you think that is?
Well, you know, many of my audiences are pretty shocked when they hear me say that I actually also don't believe in God.
A rabbi doesn't believe in God?
Well, yeah, not only I don't believe in God, but the truth is Moses didn't believe in God, never heard of God, never heard from God. Because if you look in the Torah, you won't find the word God. Now, I'm not just playing semantics. The word God conjures up all kinds of crazy and somewhat childish images of some guy in the sky who's got some control issues, who's basically made everything fun forbidden. There's a cute comic strip by the name of Calvin and Hobbes. It's a toy tiger and
I know it very well. I read it every morning. Yes.
Oh, yeah? Okay, good. And so Hobbes, the toy tiger, turns to Calvin and he says, Calvin, do you believe in God? Calvin's got this philosophical look on his face. He's got his hands behind his head and he goes, well, somebody's out to get me. And, you know, a lot of people I meet, that's God. God is some very punishing, zealous being who is hungry for honor and control.
Why such a negative concept of God? Why do we naturally have that? Or is that something humanity built up over time?
I think it's a poor reading of the Torah. I think that when the Torah was translated and when people learned the Torah without having the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral tradition, then we're missing a lot. Mm-hmm. We're missing a lot. For an example, I'm
sorry, just like, for example, it says in the Torah, an eye for an eye, which a lot of people say is, look at this God, look how mean he is. You take out somebody's eye, he's going to take out your eye, tit for tat.
Right. So without the oral tradition, the Torah, I always say to people, if you want to get really turned off to Judaism, just read the Bible. Because if you read at face value and nobody gives you an understanding how to read the Torah,
right,
then you'll come up with some of the most craziest understandings, or actually misunderstandings, of the Torah. And one of the greatest misunderstandings in Torah is, who is God?
Right.
So the atheist is actually right. There is no such thing as God, because God isn't a thing. He's not there, right?
Right.
And there's no such thing as God in existence, because God isn't in existence, but rather the Torah teaches that God is existence and even more.
The problem that I always find is that God is so big, so you can't, how can a human being possibly conceive of something which is infinite? It's impossible.
But that's God, and we don't believe in God. We believe in the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. Interestingly enough, that word, which has been translated to God, which is unfortunate because all the associations or the misunderstandings of God are connected and triggered by that word God. I prefer not to use the word God as much as possible, because the real word in the Torah is the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey. When we see that word, we say Adonai, which is a completely different name. But let's just take a moment to understand, what does the name Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey mean, which we don't pronounce, which someday we will, but right now we don't. What does that word really mean? The word comes from the word Havaya. Havaya means existence. What that means is we believe in existence. Now that doesn't sound very personal. I'm praying to existence. Existence cares about me. But essentially what Judaism is saying is that, why do we assume that existence that we exist within and are a part of is any less intelligent than you and I? How can you have an unintelligent whole, right, with intelligent parts? Right. So really, when the atheist says he doesn't believe in a God in existence, he's right. Because God isn't in existence, he is existence, and infinitely more than existence.
Okay.
So on Pesach we say Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu. In the Haggadah we say, blessed is the place, blessed is He. Right? Why is the divine referred to as the place? So our sages teach us, because Hashem is the place. The divine is the place where in which we exist. So most people have this image that there's existence. In existence, there's an infinite being called God. Alongside that God is you and me. So he's infinite, we're infinitesimal. He's all-knowing, and we're somewhat stupid, or at least not all-knowing.
Right.
He's all good,
Right.
and we're not all good. And he's almighty, and we're not almighty. Having to stand beside a God like that makes you feel so small and insignificant. But when you understand the idea of Hashem as existence and beyond, then you don't stand next to God in existence. You exist within Hashem. You are an expression and aspect of Hashem. And really what our sages teach us is Ein od milvado. There's really nothing but Hashem.
Right. Wow, that's a big statement. What I seem to find is that man inside people. It seems that people constrict God into their own personal viewpoints of Him, whereas God needs to break our conceptions. It needs to explode our small concepts of Him and bring us to a place where we don't know, or a place which is beyond currently where we are.
Well, you know, Abraham was really the man that told the people about an imageless God. Mm-hmm. Until his time, people pointed to trees and statues and whatever. Abraham said that the divine is imageless. Now, what does that mean? It's not just simply that we don't have a concept. The Talmud says that just as the soul sees and is unseen, God sees and is unseen. What does it mean that we don't see the soul? Because the soul is doing the seeing, right? And so the soul that's doing the seeing, in other words, what does seeing look like? What shape, color, texture is seeing? Seeing, which enables you to identify color, shape, and texture, itself can't be described. What does taste like? What does hearing sound like? What does smell like? In other words, consciousness.
Right.
Our sages teach us and refer to the divine Hashem as Nishmat HaNeshamot, the soul of all souls. You and I are a soul, and we exist in, and we are an expression and a limited aspect of the soul of all souls.
Right.
That's a very different orientation than most people have. They see God as some guy over there, separate from us.
Right.
We're separate from Him,
Right.
and He's telling us what to do.
Right.
But really, our deeper teachings explain that Hashem isn't somebody over there, but rather our greater self, the soul of our souls. We exist within Him. We are expressions and revelations of Him, and therefore there's really nothing but Him. That doesn't mean you're God, because I am. Okay, I'm just joking, right? You're not God, I'm not God.
Yes.
But we are expressions. In other words, it wouldn't be correct to say there's me in my hand, right? Because my hand isn't independent. My hand is an expression, a part of me.
Right.
Right? But then again, it wouldn't be correct to say my hand is me, because I'm much more than my hand.
So what you're really saying, I'm sorry, is like we're parts of God.
Yes, and that's exactly the terminology used in our deeper teachings, which is we are a chelik Eloka mim'al.
Right.
That we are a part of. But again, the word part sounds like a pizza, a slice of God.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd rather use the word aspect.
The only problem is if we're a part of something infinite, then we're infinite in ourselves, and we're part of a bigger infinite. It's almost like.
You see, the problem with the word infinite is it's actually a finite word. Why? Because when people think of the word infinite, they once again think of a being in existence that goes on and on and on and on and on in space. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why the word infinite is also misleading, because it once again brings us back to that God who's in space, who is in time, but we say God is eternal. What does eternal mean? Most people understand eternal as goes on and on and on and on and on in time.
Yeah.
But the divine isn't within space and isn't within time. The divine is beyond time and beyond space. The truth is that space and time are within Hashem.
All I want to say is, I mean, I like what you're talking about. You're expanding my notions of God. You're breaking down barriers. On the other hand, I'm not sure I'll ever get to really fully understand this concept. It's a concept which is almost impossible to understand. And the question is, if when you keep learning, do you keep changing your concept? Is this a concept which I'm going to constantly try and get closer to, or do I have to understand right now? And if I don't get it, I'm lost. It is very abstract, what you're talking
This is a concept that you'll never understand because it's not a concept, it's an experience.
Right.
In other words, it's like understanding yourself. Well, what does it mean? When I think of myself, I think of my body, I think of my character, but that's not myself, right? The self transcends your character and your body. You just simply experience self, just as you cannot describe seeing.
Right.
You experience seeing. When you begin to realize that the powers within you are not from you and that you are connected to a power greater than us all, that's an experience of Hashem.
Right.
The mistake that people make is they want to understand God.
Right.
You're not going to understand God.
Right.
You're going to be able to talk about God enough to point to the experience. As we mentioned in one of the earlier shows, we don't understand chocolate. There is a definition, and that definition is helpful so that when I look in the dictionary that chocolate is a cocoa beans grounded up with sweetener, I know I'm not going to a hardware store to find that.
Right.
But the dictionary definition doesn't really give me an understanding. It gives me direction. Where do I go experientially to know Hashem?
Well, I just want to say that I've experienced chocolate many times, and I've enjoyed that experience. But what I want to know is, how can I experience God? Like our viewers right now are sitting at home. How can they right now experience God?
Right. Well, how much time do we have left in the show?
Well, if God is so powerful and so strong and all that, I mean, certainly we could tell our viewers a little, just a small example of how they can begin to experience God in their lives.
Right. So we actually addressed that in a previous show, and we didn't have enough time, so we'll see
Okay.
if we can pull this off.
All right.
Okay. One of the names for Hashem, we just actually covered the name, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey, which suggests that we're talking about God as existence and beyond, and there's nothing but God. But there's another name that's identified with the divine, which is the name Elohim. And our sages teach us that the name Elohim means Baal Kochot Kulam, the master and the owner of all powers. Now, the master and the owner of all powers, that means that your power to talk doesn't belong to you. Your power to think doesn't belong to you. Your power to walk, your power to move. The truth is, all the powers that you and I this very second are using really don't belong to us.
Right.
And we're actually not the masters of these powers.
Right.
Artists experience this pretty frequently, because if you ask an artist what is his ecstatic moment as an artist, he will say, when I am no longer the artist. And I experience myself as the paintbrush.
As an actor, I can tell you that's certainly true for me. I often try and say, how can I get into that place where I'm at the best creative level? And it's a place where I can never describe to myself. I can never really find that.
What basically happens is, forgive me for putting it this way, you feel possessed. I mean, I'm a public speaker,
Right.
and I've spoken all over the world.
Yeah.
And the moment that to me is the ecstasy is when it's not David Aaron speaking anymore.
Right.
When I am able to move my ego out of the way, and I experience myself almost like a glove, and a hand just reaches in me, and there's this flow, and I literally hear a voice telling me what to be saying.
Wow, that is amazing. I've experienced that myself.
I had an amazing encounter with a very famous screenwriter in Los Angeles, and explained to him this idea. And he said, Rabbi, I want to tell you something. I've never shared this with anybody before, but when I sit down to write a movie, I have a prayer. I say, please, God, use me.
Wow.
Rabbi, I did not write any of these movies.
Wow.
When I sit in front of my keyboard to start writing, I don't know what happens. I feel such insecurity. I just think of all those films I wrote, and I realize I didn't write any of them.
I'm going to try that tonight, by the way, so we'll test it out.
I experienced myself, he said, as just an instrument for the higher creative power. That's an experience of what we call Hashem. If people want to use the word God, fine, but if the word God alienates you and makes you feel that there's some guy that's trying to control you,
Right.
and some guy that's is demanding honor from you, rather than seeking to be expressed in the world through you, then you've got the wrong God.
That's a fantastic thing. I think it's a great test that each one of us can try in ourselves. How do we perceive God? And if we perceive him negatively, we have the wrong concept of God in our mind. Great. Okay, I want to thank you very much, Rabbi, and I hope to continue this conversation next time.
Looking forward.
Thank you very much, and we hope you can join us at home next time as well.